When the local rescue rescued Stitch, he had been tied up to a tree for so long and neglected for so long that the collar he was wearing grew into his skin. He's got 3 of those scars, so it happened 3 times. So the story I was given is that they got him off of the chain, and it took 6 grown men to corral him into a box where they could rescue him. He fought off those 6 grown men with 2 partially closed wounds from that collar and a 3rd giant gaping wound on his neck. And for example, when I got Stitch, which he'd been with the rescue for about 6 months, Stitch still had about 3 inches of stitches left in his neck from the wound that wasn't healing on one side, and 1 inch of stitches on the other side that wasn't healing. They were just having some issues closing up, so I eventually had to pull those stitches out when they did close up. But anyway, he still had, like when I got him, he still had those stitches on. He was still starved because they didn't want to put too much weight on him too fast. And he was still covered in battle wounds from all the dog fights he would get in, or maybe his owner beat him up. I'm not too sure, but his whole front end and back end was covered in scars and in bruises. Because he would whine sometimes when I first got him, when I pet his ass or his ribs. Sorry, it's hips. I shouldn't say ass. Oh, I did it again. Anyway, when I first got Stitch, he was basically a wild animal. They brought him from the place he was rescued to a kennel. He wasn't allowed near dogs for the first 2 months. Then he was allowed near dogs, but only little dogs. He was allowed near them for 3 months, and in the kennel they taught him what the kennel was and how to go into the kennel and how to stay in there and be appropriate. But that's just about the only command he was taught. So from there, they needed the space, and they didn't think he would do well with other big dogs, so they sent him to a foster who had a dog house and fencing, and he stayed out there for, I guess, about a month. And then I met him. And when I met him, they told me he had never been okay with adult men or just men in general. In fact, he wouldn't let the fosters, like the foster lady's husband, really come into the cage. And if he did come into the cage, he was always kind of on guard. When I met him, he barked a couple times, and I postured that I wasn't a threat. And after that, he stopped barking, and he let me into his cage, into the enclosure there, and he came up to me, and then he showed me his belly, and that was the very first picture you saw in this video. From there, I walked him for 2-3 times, just about every night after I met him. I would go out there and take him for a walk, and eventually there was another emergency where a mom, a dog, had a bunch of pups, and they needed the space, so they asked me to adopt Stitch. So I did. And yeah, he went from being a very reactive dog. He reacted to just about everything, and a dog that had no commands and didn't know how to calm himself. himself down, and he was very curious as well, so he's always poking his nose into places he shouldn't be, right? He had no experiences on the line, so yeah, we went from basically, like a savage animal to just, he's an angel of a dog. I couldn't ask for a better dog, honestly.
He snapped the bone
and it breaks my heart what was done to him, but I'm just happy that he's in my life now. Yeah. Holy fuck, man, the world's just going wild. Like, I drive out here 30 minutes out of town to walk my dog, Stitches. And guess what I find, man? A fucking sword. What the fuck? So one funny story I have with Stitch, I guess at my own expense, is when I first got him, we would go to the grocery store, and we would socialize there. So what I would do is I'd go and I'd park in the parking lot, and we'd basically watch people go into the grocery store, and if he reacted, I would correct him. At first with treats, and then eventually I worked my way up to being verbal with him, and it helped so much, tremendously. But anyway, when I was doing that, at the same time I was messaging this lady, and things were not serious, but we were kind of talking, right? And what ended up happening is this lady works at the grocery store. So she would see me every day with Stitches parked in the parking lot, just sitting there. And I think she thought I was stalking her, because we went from talking just about every day to me going into the store and her running and hiding behind one of her male coworkers. So my dog cost me a relationship, but that's all right. She probably wasn't the one, and he's enough to love for now anyway. This fucking dog, dude. I go to lay down and he jumps up behind me and fucking takes my pillow. So one of Stitch's biggest hurdles is how he would act in the truck. I'm not sure why, but he gets excited and he howls. He howls and he panics. And I spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours driving around trying to break his habit. And I just couldn't figure out a way to do it while I was driving. So I had a brilliant idea one day. I finally figured out how to drive in the car with Stitch without him freaking out. How's it going, Stitch?
Showed no sign of any change.
It fucking worked. What the fuck? So when I first got Stitch, I needed a place to run him, and these people suggested that I take him to there's a ballpark, and they told me to take him there and let him run in the ballpark. So despite me questioning that, I decided, you know what, he needs to run. I'm gonna let him out, let him run in the field. So I take off his leash from his collar, and he bolts, and he finds a fucking hole in that fence right away. He just sniffed out that hole, and he gets out, and he runs about 200 meters to the highway. He sees a car, so he starts chasing it. So I'm behind him, running behind him, trying to catch up with him. He's chasing these cars on the highway. And what's happening is, as he goes to chase a car, he'll get in front of it and that car will stop. And then when they stop, he tries to go around to bite its tire. And then the truck would take off, and then he'd think that it was a game. So he'd run and chase the vehicle the other way. And then they'd get too far, and then another vehicle would show up. So he'd stand in front of it, and then same thing, he'd go to the side, and then it would pull away and he'd chase it. So he did that about 6 times as I was running back and forth trying to grab him while he was doing it, trying to tackle him, actually. And, you know, all these people are watching me and they're giving me the dirtiest look ever. And finally, he gets tired with that and he decides to run up a giant hill. So, you know, I'm already gasping for breath at this point. I run up the hill as hard as I can. I get about halfway there, just like wheezing, and he disappears over the edge of the hill. And I'm like, oh no. I get to the top of the hill and he's not there. I start panicking and I start calling. I called the rescue that I got him from. I called the foster. I was like, I need you guys out here. I need you to help me right now. And I'm sitting there and I'm shaking his food and I'm calling him, Stitches, please come back. And he after about 20 minutes he comes back and he's foaming at the mouth and he cut his tongue because his tongue was out on the side of his mouth and his teeth cut it. And he basically comes up to me and he falls beside me and he starts spasming because he's ran himself so hard. What a nightmare that was. Stitch just ran away from me, dude. I went to the ballpark and he got out. I chased him down the highway all the way to the fucking old hill and then into the bush, bro. And then he finally fucking came back. Like 20 minutes later. I'm fucking exhausted. Dude, so many fucking people drove past us, man, just give me the dirtiest look. He kept fucking running, they'd stop, and then he'd go to play with them, and because they couldn't hit him anymore, they'd take off and he'd fucking start chasing them, dude. It happened like 5 times. I'm fucking exhausted. Although, you know, it's been amazing, but at times it's been so hard for both me and him through the training, you know? And it's just, you, as a dog owner, you have to sacrifice quite a bit, you know? And especially with him, because he didn't know anything, I had to teach him so much, just so he could kind of be okay being alone at the start. And, you know, through all that shit, he taught me, 1, unconditional love, because I wasn't always perfect. And 2, he taught me, you know, it's just, he taught me how worth it is to be there for another, you know, animal or person or being. Because when you're down, when I'm down, he's there for me, you know? I've been in a couple dangerous situations and he's definitely changed the outcomes of those situations. So it's like, as much as that I'm there for him now, he's there for me. And it's just beautiful. And I'm happy he came into my life. And this is a tribute because I've had him for 1 year now. Happy birthday, Stitch.